Well, in case you missed it, on Monday, the Supreme Court declined to hear a case challenging a Maryland law that bans certain semi automatic firearms, which gun control advocates are referring to as assault weapons, of course. The plaintiffs argue that semi automatic rifles like the AR 15 are protected under the Second Amendment, and they're right in the argument, of course. This case comes after the Supreme Court's 2022 ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, which established a new standard for gun regulation, stating that state gun control laws must align with the historic tradition of firearm regulation in the United States. That's what the Bruin case decided. Despite Scotus not taking the case, the U.S. Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals is weighing in on it, but some say the court takes way too long to come to its decisions. Here with me now to discuss this questionable, unconstitutional act is Turning Point USA contributor JoBob. JoBob, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's talk about this. Look, the Supreme Court declined, but really, in the Bruin case, they've already decided this. You know, the AR-15, which is Armalite rifle, it is one of the most prevalent firearms in America. Millions of them out there. And, you know, if we really had a gun problem in America with 400, 500 million guns, there'd be slaughter every day across this country, but there's not. They say, you know, we have this terrible problem with guns, not like they say we do. And this is one of the most common firearms in America. What are we doing here?
You know, Steve, I think you might have misspoken. You said Armalite rifle is what AR stands for. If you ask any average college student nowadays, that clearly stands for assault rifle, which can clearly be defined by, well, I don't know what it's defined by because no one has a strict definition of it.
Well, you know, because it has this really cool looking handle. It's got a cool handle and a cool forearm and this really bad looking thing that goes back and forth on the butt plate, and you can change your cheek and it's all cosmetic. And they say, oh, these super powerful 223. A 223, yes, lethal round. So is a 22, a rimfire rifle is a lethal round. But a 223 is not a particularly powerful rifle. I'm sorry, I digress. Go ahead.
Well, you know what's interesting is I was at my local gun store the other day, and I don't necessarily talk politics in and around the community that I'm in, but it was interesting because I was asking the gun store owner, you know, what do you think about all of this crazy stuff in California? I live in California. Please pray for me. But he, interestingly enough, said, well, it's all dopey because, you know, he pointed to an AR-15 on his wall. He said, this is what's everybody's all upset about. But and then he pointed to a different Remington right next to it. This is clearly a more powerful gun, but it doesn't look as scary as this other gun. So it's not regulated at all, which just goes to show you how ridiculous a bunch of these laws are. What I will say about the Supreme Court not taking this up is, you know, we can talk about whether or not that's a good or bad thing. I don't think it's a good thing. I think they should uphold the Constitution at really any cost, which, you know, doesn't need to be said. But what I think is interesting is the fact that, well, this extremist MAGA right-wing courts, such as channels like MSNBC and CNN continue to call it, doesn't always go the MAGA direction. So in what sense are they so extreme they can't be believed, or any of the terrible things that CNN and MSNBC claim about the Supreme Court? You know, there's a lot of stuff that they do that we're not super excited about. So
that's exactly really right, JoBob.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Yeah. And talking about rifles, you know, a 270, a 7mm, a 308, a 358, Holland, these are all rifles that are far more powerful than a 223, but they don't look as scary, I guess. I guess semi-automatic rifles that are calibered in 308, which, by the way, is the preferred sniper caliber for the FBI and police departments all over this country. That's a powerful round. It's readily available. Millions of them are out there, but they don't talk about those every day. It doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
No, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And you know what's also interesting, and just a thing to look at the next time, you know, this burbles up into the media. Nobody likes to see somebody misuse a firearm. But when it does happen, all of the laws that are proposed wouldn't have stopped the person who used that firearm in a way that we don't approve of.
And
In
what
other
does
words, all
that
I'm
tell
saying
you?
is, yeah, all the rules that are being established in the wake of something terrible happening wouldn't have stopped the terrible thing happening. And to take it a step further, all of these crazy woke DAs that George Soros has funded around the country aren't enforcing any of the gun laws anyway. So, at
That's
the end of
right.
the day, what is the
So
point
what that
here?
tells
Like,
me,
what are we doing?
well, the point is simple. Control. Take away
Mhm.
the firearm law-abiding people. If the laws are not going to impact what happened, and you're exactly right, JoBob, they don't, by and large. They do nothing to change what would have happened or did happen. So that tells you they're not after the criminal. They're after you. They're after me. I'll give you the last word.
Well, unfortunately, Stephen, I don't know if this is the same for you, but it's happened to a ton of my friends. All of my firearms have fallen into the local lake, unretrievable to me. And I just, it's just an unfortunate thing that has definitely happened to me. I'd like to say that on record.
That's a terrible thing. I'm heartbroken. You lost all your guns to the bottom of the lake. I am so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
JoBob, thank you for being here. Great. And listen, you live in California, as my father used to say, choices, JoBob. People make choices. And if you're in California, well, choices. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great weekend.